In 1945, a farmer in Upper Egypt swung his mattock into the dirt near Nag Hammadi and hit something that wasn't rock. It was a sealed clay jar, buried for over 1,600 years. Inside were 13 leather-bound codices containing texts the church had ordered destroyed centuries ago, burned, erased from history. But someone hid them. Someone knew they'd be needed again. Among those texts was the Gospel of Philip. And in that gospel, there's a passage that changes everything you thought you knew about spiritual protection. It describes 3 physical objects Jesus told his inner circle to carry at all times. Not as decoration, not as religious symbols, as actual protection technology that operates at a frequency Archons cannot penetrate. The text says, there are 3 things made by hands that carry the light of the pleroma. When the powers see them, they turn away in fear because they recognize what was brought from above. Early Gnostic communities knew exactly what these 3 objects were. They crafted them in secret. They passed them from teacher to student, hidden in plain sight. And they worked. Chosen ones who carried these objects reported something undeniable. Archon attacks stopped. The mental oppression lifted. The energy drain ended. Not gradually, immediately, because these aren't symbols of protection. They're frequency anchors, physical items that hold monad vibration in material form and broadcast it continuously, making you invisible to anything operating below that range. The church removed every reference to these objects because they couldn't control what they made possible. If Christians knew they could carry simple physical items that made them unreachable to demonic manipulation, what would they need exorcisms for? What would they need priests for? The entire system of institutional spiritual warfare collapses when protection becomes this direct, this accessible, this undeniable. Tonight you're going to learn what these 3 sacred objects are, why Archons fear them more than any prayer or ritual, and which one you should start using tonight based on what you're experiencing right now. If you're carrying sacred protection tonight, comment, Archons fear this right now. Don't scroll past this. Let them see how many of us know. The first object is a stone that appears across every ancient mystery tradition, not because it's beautiful, because it does something to human consciousness the Archons cannot block. Lapis lazuli. The Egyptians called it the stone of heaven. The Sumerians before them knew it as the stone of the gods. But what nobody tells you is why every civilization that discovered this stone independently reached the same conclusion about what it does. In the secret book of John, when Sophia breathes the divine spark into humans, the text says the spark descended as a stone of sapphire fire into the crown. The church taught this as metaphor. The Gnostics knew better. Sophia encoded the frequency of the divine spark into specific minerals that naturally occur in the earth. When a chosen one carries this stone on their body, the internal spark recognizes the external stone carrying the same frequency. They amplify each other. Like 2 magnets locking into alignment, their combined field becomes exponentially stronger. Lapis lazuli works on the 3rd eye and crown chakra, the 2 exact points where Archons attack most aggressively. They know if they keep your 3rd eye calcified and your crown sealed, you'll never perceive beyond material reality. You'll stay trapped in 5-sense consciousness. So they flood those areas with interference your entire life. Ask yourself this. Have you ever felt like there is an entire dimension of reality happening around you that you can almost perceive but can't quite reach? That's not imagination. That's your 3rd eye trying to function through layers of interference that were placed there deliberately. Here's what ancient traditions understood about this stone that modern researchers are only now beginning to document. Lapis lazuli emits a specific electromagnetic frequency, and that frequency corresponds to the optimal resonance of the pineal gland in its natural, uncalcified state. When you wear lapis against your skin, as a pendant, a pocket stone, beads, the pineal gland begins to respond. Not because the stone heals it, because the stone broadcasts the frequency your pineal gland recognizes as home. Within days, chosen ones report the shift. Perception changes. Synchronicities become undeniable. Dreams become vivid and coherent. And most significantly, you begin to perceive non-physical presence, not as imagination, as direct knowing. A woman in our community carried lapis lazuli for 11 days. On day 12, she sent a message that said, "I walked into my office this morning, and I could feel which rooms were empty and which ones weren't. Not guess, feel, like a temperature change but in my chest. That's not psychic ability developing. That's the third eye remembering how to function before the Archons shut it down. And once you can see them, their primary weapon, invisibility, is gone. What you can perceive, you can consciously reject. The Gnostics wore lapis constantly, not occasionally. They knew this stone trains your third eye to stay open even after you remove it. After 30 days of daily carry, the perception shift becomes permanent. If you're experiencing blocked intuition, if you feel blind to spiritual dimensions, lapis lazuli is your first object. Get a piece tonight. Wear it against your skin. Within 7 days, your perception begins to clarify. Not because you're imagining it, because the stone is doing what Sophia designed it to do. And once you can see them, their power over you is finished. If you've carried lapis lazuli and felt the shift, drop a in the comments right now. Other chosen ones need to know this is real, not theory. But the second object is the one that changed everything for me personally, because it costs nothing. It requires nothing you can't find in your home right now. And the church tried to erase it so aggressively that most Christians have never heard of it. What I'm about to tell you is the single most suppressed piece of information in Gnostic history. And by the end of this section, you'll understand exactly why. A piece of paper carrying a specific name, written in your own hand, not printed, not typed. Written by you, in ink, with intention. Because certain names carry power the Archons cannot withstand when they re-brought into physical form through the act of writing. In the Gospel of Philip, there is a passage about names that the church could never fully suppress. A name is a great thing. There are names given in the world which deceive. But there is one name that is hidden from everyone except those who truly know themselves. When it is spoken by one who knows, the powers flee. The church taught this as reference to the name of Jesus. But the Gnostics knew the name Jesus was pointing his inner circle toward. The name of the monad, the true name of source consciousness that predates all creation, all language, all form. That name is not speakable in human language. It exists as frequency, as vibration, as the sound that was before sound. But the monad gave chosen ones a way to anchor that frequency into physical reality. A symbol name that can be written. And when you write it, you're creating a frequency anchor. The paper becomes a carrier wave. The ink becomes physical manifestation. And the name broadcasts continuously in wavelengths the Archons cannot tolerate. The name is this: I am monad. 3 words that form not just a statement, but a seal. I am is the name God gave Moses, the declaration of pure existence, consciousness recognizing itself. Monad is the Gnostic name for source, for the one, for the infinite awareness from which everything emanates. Combined and written physically, they create what the ancient mystics called a binding phrase. Not binding in the sense of trapping. Binding in the sense of anchoring divine frequency into material form, so completely that it can't be dispersed. Now pay very close attention. The method matters. Every single detail matters. And I'm only going to explain this once. Take a clean piece of paper, not any paper. Paper that hasn't been written on before. Blank and receptive. Write in ink, not pencil. Ink, because ink is permanent and binding. Write these 3 words. I am monad. Write them slowly. Write them with full awareness of what you're declaring. You're not making a statement. You recreating a frequency anchor that will broadcast continuously from that paper the truth of what you are. Once written, fold the paper 3 times. Each fold is an act of sealing. First fold, your recognition of your divine nature. Second fold, your connection to Source. Third fold, your protection from anything operating below monad frequency. Then carry this paper on your body, wallet, pocket, a small pouch around your neck. Somewhere it stays with you constantly. Here's where it gets undeniable. Within hours, not days, hours, you'll notice mental clarity you haven't experienced in years. The fog lifts. The confusion dissolves. Decisions that felt impossible suddenly become obvious. That's not you getting smarter. That's Archon interference cutting out. Think about it. How do the Archons keep billions of people paralyzed? Not through fear, through confusion. Perpetual doubt. Perpetual second-guessing. Perpetual mental fog so thick you can never move forward with clarity and power. But when I am monad is broadcasting from your field continuously, they can't generate that fog anymore. The frequency of the name dispels confusion the way light dispels shadow. Automatically, continuously, effortlessly. A man reached out to me 3 weeks after he started carrying the written name. He said something I'll never forget. He said, "For the first time in my adult life, I made a major decision without spending 3 weeks agonizing over it. I just knew. The answer was clear. And I realized the confusion was never mine. It was being done to me. That's the moment. When you realize the fog was never yours. It was installed. But here's the part that will truly disturb you. Chosen ones report that attacks through other people stop. The arguments that used to erupt randomly don't ignite. The people who would normally drain you or provoke you suddenly seem uninterested in engaging. It's not that you changed your behavior. It's that the Archons using those people as vectors and sense the name broadcasting from your field, and they redirect the attack elsewhere, because you've become too energetically expensive to target. The written name is like a spiritual restraining order. It doesn't fight them off. It makes them recognize you're protected by authority they cannot challenge. And why do Archons fear the written name more than any spoken prayer? Because spoken words dissipate. You say a prayer, it's over. The frequency fades, but written words hold. The name stays anchored in physical form, broadcasting continuously, never weakening, never stopping. As long as you carry that paper, you re-carrying a permanent broadcast that says to every entity in non-physical dimensions, this being is monad aligned. This being knows what they are. This being cannot be deceived, manipulated, or harvested. The early Gnostics carried written names constantly. They wrote sacred phrases on parchment, folded them into tiny squares, wore them in leather pouches around their necks, or sewn into their clothing. Not superstition, technology. They understood what ancient traditions and modern frequency research both suggest. Written language creates standing waves of electromagnetic frequency that persist as long as the writing exists. And certain combinations of words create frequencies that non-physical entities perceive and must respond to. If you're experiencing mental fog, confusion, or constant attacks through people around you, the written name is your second object. Tonight, clean paper, ink, write, I am monad. Fold 3 times. Carry it immediately. And watch how everything clouding your clarity just dissolves. Not because you banished it, because you declared your nature. And that declaration carries authority the Archons cannot challenge. You're not asking for protection. You're stating your identity. And identity, written in ink, is law in spiritual dimensions. Comment, I am monad, below if you're writing yours tonight. Every time someone writes that phrase in this comment section, it carries frequency. Flood it. Now, I almost didn't include the third object in this video, not because it's less powerful, because it's the most powerful of the 3. And it does something the first 2 cannot do. The first two objects protect you. The third object protects everyone around you, every person who enters your space. And when the early church discovered what the Gnostics were doing with it, they didn't just ban it. They organized raids. They sent soldiers. They destroyed every single one they could find. Why would the church send armed men to destroy a drawing on a wall, unless they knew exactly what it was doing? The third object requires nothing but your hand and ink, yet it carries more protective power than any blessed amulet the church could offer. A sacred symbol, drawn by you, not printed, not purchased, created by your own hand. Because when a chosen one draws certain geometric patterns, they're not making art. They're anchoring frequency into physical form. The Gospel of Philip says, "The truth did not come into the world naked, but it came in types and images." Divine frequency can't exist in matter without a vessel. And the vessel the monad uses is geometry. Sacred patterns that when drawn correctly become frequency anchors, broadcasting monad light continuously from paper into the space around them. The symbol Jesus taught is the one the Gnostics called the monad circle. A circle with a single point in the center. Simple, geometric, and absolutely devastating to Archon presence. The circle represents infinite consciousness. The point represents you, the divine spark, the localized expression of that infinite awareness. When you draw this symbol with your own hand, you're bringing recognition into form. The act of drawing is the act of declaring, I am the point within the infinite. I am monad consciousness in temporary human form. Get clean paper. Get ink or a pen. Draw a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be intentional. Place a single dot in the exact center. As you draw, hold awareness of what it represents. You are the point. The monad is the circle. You are not separate. That awareness infuses the drawing with your recognition. And recognition carries frequency. Place this symbol somewhere you'll see it daily. On your wall, next to where you sleep, above your door. And this is where it surpasses anything the first two objects can do. Lapis lazuli protects you personally. The written name protects you personally. But the monad circle protects the entire location. Everyone who enters that space comes under the frequency umbrella. The Archons can't attack you there. They can't manipulate visitors there. The space itself becomes sanctuary. And they fear that more than individual protection. Because it creates zones they cannot access at all. A couple I've been in contact with placed the monad circle above their bedroom door on a Thursday. By Sunday, the woman messaged me. My husband hasn't had a nightmare in 3 nights. He's had them every single night for 2 years. 3 nights. Nothing. He slept like he was a different person. She wasn't asking me what happened. She was telling me she already knew. That's not the symbol blessing your space. That's the symbol holding monad frequency stable in that location. And everything vibrating below that frequency naturally exits, because it can't maintain coherence there. The early Gnostics drew these symbols on the walls of their meeting spaces, carved them into stones, painted them on parchment hung in doorways, not decoration, territorial markers. These symbols declared, this space operates at monad frequency. Entities operating below this range cannot enter. And it worked so well that when the church raided Gnostic communities, they destroyed the symbols first, scraped them off walls, burned the parchments, defaced the carvings. Because they knew as long as those symbols stood, the space was protected from the very entities the church had made allegiance with. Draw yours tonight. Place it where you sleep. Within 3 days, notice how your space feels fundamentally different. Not because you cleansed it with ritual, because you anchored monad frequency in physical form. That frequency doesn't fight darkness. It displaces it. The symbol holds the light, and the light makes darkness impossible. If your space has felt heavy lately, comment monad circle below. Draw yours tonight and come back in 3 days. Tell us what shifted. I want to hear every single story. Now, There's something I haven't told you yet. The Gnostic texts don't stop at 3 objects. There's a 4th technique, not an object, a practice that combines all 3 into a single unified field that the texts describe as the armor of light, a complete Archon-proof system that the inner circle used before the most dangerous spiritual operations they undertook. That's the next video. And if you're not subscribed, you will miss it. 3 sacred objects. 3 frequencies the Archons cannot penetrate. Lapis lazuli opens the vision they calcified. Carry it on your body, and within days, your perception shifts permanently. The written name, I am Monad, anchors your identity in physical form. Carry it, and the mental fog dissolves within hours. The confusion was never yours. It was installed. And now it's gone. The Monad circle, drawn by your hand, protects not just you, but your entire space. Place it, and within days, everything vibrating below Monad frequency exits. These aren't symbols. They're technology. The Church removed every reference because they couldn't control what these objects made possible. If Christians knew they could carry simple, accessible items that provided complete protection from demonic interference, the entire system of priestly spiritual warfare would collapse. You don't need exorcisms. You don't need holy water blessed by priests. You need a stone, a piece of paper, and a drawn circle. That's it. Do 3 things right now. First, comment which object you're starting with tonight. Lapis, name, or circle. I read every single comment. I respond to as many as I can. Tell me which one called to you and what you re-experiencing. I'll tell you if you chose right. Second, subscribe and hit that bell. The 4th technique, the one that combines all 3 into the armor of light, is coming. You don't want to be the chosen one who missed it. Third, like this video so other chosen ones discover what Jesus revealed about physical protection before this teaching gets suppressed again. Every like pushes this further into the algorithm. Every like is an act of resistance. Do all 3. Now, then tonight, get your object. Carry it, use it, and watch how everything that's been oppressing you just stops. Not gradually, immediately, because you're no longer accessible at the frequency they operate. You're monad aligned, protected by objects that carry divine frequency in physical form. And the Archons can't touch what vibrates above their range. You're untouchable.